I used to believe that if you chose carefully, if you loved loudly and kept showing up, love would keep the wolves out. That was the bargain I thought I'd made with the universe. I'll do the work, you give me safety. I held on to that like a life raft long after it should have sunk. My name is Mason. I'm 36, and I live in Austin, where summer heat sticks to you like a sentence you can't finish. I lead product at a clean energy startup, which is a glamorous way of saying I spend my days translating chaos into roadmaps and checklists. I like plans. I like things that add up. I grew up in a house where nothing added up. My parents' divorce turned our living room into a courtroom annex, so structure is how I breathe. Claire was everything I wasn't. She could make a room warmer by standing in it. She designed brand systems for an architecture firm, colors, shapes, small details that made people feel something they couldn't explain. I met her at a community mural fundraiser on East 6th. My buddy dragged me there. I was going to stay 20 minutes, toss 20 bucks in a jar, and leave. Claire was standing by a folding table, balancing a paper plate, sagging with brisket and coleslaw, explaining to an old man why the shade of blue she'd picked would make the alley feel less like a shortcut and more like a destination. The man nodded as if she'd just told him a secret about his own childhood. She caught me listening and lifted a brow. "You got paint on your shoes," she said. I looked down. There was a bright streak across my sneaker. "Now it's a limited edition," I said. "Tragic," she replied, smiling, and it was like someone had opened a window in a room I didn't know was stuffy. We talked about small things, tacos, running, the best coffee in town, and then bigger ones, families, the kind of people we wanted to be. She was quick, kind, funny in a way that didn't need an audience. I felt my shoulders drop, like my body understood before my brain did that this was safe ground. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became weekends. Her toothbrush appeared at my place first, then one of her plants, a dramatic fiddle leaf fig that punished us for looking at it wrong, migrated to my window. She teased my apartment for being a shrine to function. She put a lamp in the corner that made the room glow instead of just be lit. She taped color swatches to the wall and asked me to pick between rainwater and Baltic. I told her they looked the same. She looked at me like I just confessed a felony, then laughed and kissed my cheek. We fit. My lists and her intuition made a house, then a home. I proposed on a January morning at Enchanted Rock. We hiked in the dark with a thermos of coffee and 2 cinnamon rolls she swore were for blood sugar, not romance. The sky went from charcoal to lavender and then suddenly opened, and she cried when I knelt clean, shocked tears that made me feel like the world had been arranged just for us. She said yes by nodding so fast the ring almost flew out of my hand. We sat on the pink granite and ate cold cinnamon rolls with numb fingers and laughed about the future like it was a film we'd already seen. We told our families. My mom texted 50 confetti emojis. Her dad sent a thumbs up and then called me to say he'd always thought I was steady, which sounded like an insult until he added, "She needs steady. The world taught her to doubt gravity." I didn't know what he meant then. I do now. The prenup conversation started like a pebble in a shoe. Not because I wanted to make something romantic feel transactional, but because of where I came from. I watched my father surrender pieces of himself across a 2-year divorce. Money was just the scoreboard. The real loss was the way he shrank. He used to be big in every room. Afterward, he measured his sentences like they cost him. I promised myself that if I ever married, I'd go in with guardrails, not because I expected to crash, but because roads are safer with them. A week after the engagement, I told Claire. I didn't ambush her with documents. I made coffee, cleared the table, and said, "I want us to plan for the worst we'll never see." Her face didn't harden, it emptied. "You don't trust me," she said, and it wasn't drama. It was hurt, raw, and childlike. "I do," I said. "This isn't about you. It's about me not wanting to turn into my dad if something explodes. It's about protecting both of us from a system that eats people." She looked at the ring, then at me. "You're asking for a parachute on the way up." "I'm asking us to put one under the seat," I said. "We'll never pull it." We argued. We circled the same sentences: love, fear, faith, fairness. She cried quietly, and I had to fight the urge to fold completely, but she agreed to talk to a lawyer. We did it right. Separate counsel, transparency, time. I promised myself that if she said no, I would still marry her. I would just be more scared than I wanted to be. She didn't say no. Her attorney pushed for tweaks about future kids, career breaks, debt. The clause that would later become a razor slid through the process with hardly any friction: an infidelity provision, mutual defining cheating, broadly physical or romantic involvement outside our relationship, triggering a $250,000 payment to the other within 90 days if we broke up or divorced. 250, Claire said in the car afterward, eyebrows up. Round number, I said, shrugging, suddenly embarrassed by the arithmetic of my own heart. She laughed then, an easy, sunny sound. "Guess I better stay boring and faithful. I can't afford a plot twist." "I'm counting on you for plot twists that don't involve other people," I said, and she squeezed my hand and said, "Deal." Wedding planning turned us into a team, and then into adversaries, and then into a team again, which I'm told is normal. She wanted string lights and an outdoor ceremony for the breeze. I wanted a roof because meteorology exists. We landed on a covered courtyard near Rainy Street with heaters on standby. She cared about the playlist feeling like summer nights. I cared about the bar not blowing our budget. We made a spreadsheet with tabs named photographer, florals, do we actually need a donut wall? Every fight ended in laughter, every compromise in a kiss. It felt like building something with both hands. The first crack didn't look like a crack. It looked like a weeknight where I flew back late from a conference and texted that I'd be home by 10. "I've got a branding review," she wrote back. "Might be out." When I got home, her car was already in the lot. The house was dark. The living room smelled like oranges and a cologne I didn't own. I told myself it was a sample card from a magazine. I told myself a lot of things. Little things started to stack. She changed her phone wallpaper to a beach I didn't recognize. She laughed at texts and angled the screen an inch away without meaning to. Unknown caller popped up twice in 1 week during dinner, and she hit decline with a face like she was swatting a fly. She began to say we about people I didn't know. "We're grabbing drinks after the review. We might hit the exhibit on Saturday." When I asked who we was, she'd name a coworker I'd never heard of in a way that made me feel provincial for not knowing. I told myself I was paranoid because of the prenup, that I turned love into a ledger and now I was auditing it. I told myself the crack was in me. I wish I could write that I trusted her cleanly until the night I couldn't. The truth is messier. Suspicion and shame took turns driving. I would inventory her tenderness to prove I was wrong. Her thumb on my wrist absent-mindedly, the way she fell asleep breathing into my shoulder, and then at 2 a.m. my brain would replay the smell of that cologne and whisper, "Are you sure?" One Saturday, we drove to San Marcos to float the river with friends. There's a photo of us on the bank, wet hair, sunburned shoulders, beers in our hands, smiling like advertisements for summer. I look at it now and see that she isn't leaning into me. She's leaning away, a centimeter you only notice if you're looking for it. Maybe I've rewritten that in my head. Memory is an unreliable witness. All I know is the feeling of coming home that night and seeing her phone light up in the dark with a name that wasn't saved, just a number. She flipped it face down and said, "Spam, too fast." The man's name was Julian. I didn't know that yet. He worked in strategy at her firm, tall, with a smile like a dare, the kind of man who floats through rooms and collects looks. I'd shaken his hand once after a holiday party when a group of us ended up at a bar. He'd said he loved Claire's eye. He'd said my watch was understated cool. I remember thinking, this guy wants to be liked by everyone. I did not think, this guy will blow up my life. The night everything snapped didn't announce itself. I was scheduled to land at midnight from a 2-day trip to Chicago. Storms moved through, planes shuffled, and I got onto an earlier flight. I texted Claire on the tarmac, landing 92D, "You want anything?" No answer. I grabbed Ty on the way home because we were those people. We had a favorite order and our spot where the lady behind the counter called me by name. Her car was in the lot. The upstairs light glowed. The music drifting down was low and breathy, not her usual playlist. I walked up the stairs with the bag swinging from my fingers. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it with my foot because my hands were full of dinner and hope. There they were. They didn't see me immediately, which feels like a kindness now because I got a second to decide who I was going to be in this moment. Hot rage, cold precision, or collapse. My body chose precision. I set the bag down. A container slid out and burst. Sweet chili sauce unfurled across the carpet like something wounded. They scrambled apart. Claire's face shock, then shame, then something I still don't have a word for. Julian, half-dressed, eyes trying to rearrange the scene into one where he wasn't the villain. I didn't yell, I didn't throw anything. I said, "Get out," and my voice sounded like it had been recorded earlier, like a message I was playing for them from a safer time. Julian grabbed his shoes and muttered my name like it could be an apology. He touched the doorframe as he passed me, a reflex like he needed proof the world was solid. The front door opened, closed. Silence dropped, heavy and new. Claire came down the hall wearing one of my t-shirts, the old college one she'd claimed. Her shoulders shook. "Mason," she said, "wait." I stared at the shredded quiet between us and said, "I'm listening." "It's not." She stopped, exhaled, said the thing you say when there's no version that makes you look good. "I'm sorry." "Why?" I asked. Not as a weapon, though. It could sound like one, but because I needed a reason that made the physics work. I needed gravity to be gravity. She swallowed. "I don't know," she said, and then I felt small. Work's Ben. Julian sees me. He makes me feel like I'm the sharpest person in the room. With you, I feel loved, but sometimes it felt like I was living inside your plan. Like everything had a line item. This, she waved at the wreckage of our life, wasn't a plan. It was a bad idea. It was, she started crying hard. It was me being a coward. I stood there and measured whether her cowardice could coexist with my love. "You could have told me," I said. "We could have been messy while still being honest. You chose a different kind of messy." She nodded, hands opening and closing like she was holding something she couldn't keep. "I hate that I'm the kind of person who did this," she whispered. "You're not," I said automatically, and then stopped, because the kindness I reflexively offer people is the same softness that gets me cut. "Maybe you are," I said. "Maybe you're also 1,000 other things. But right now, you're the person who did this to me." She reached for my arm and then dropped her hand like touching me would burn. "Are you going to—" She couldn't say the word, so she said the number. "The clause. Do you remember why it exists?" I asked. She closed her eyes. "Because your dad lost himself, because you promised you'd never let the ground open under you." "It also exists because we agreed to it when we were good," I said. "Not as a gun, as a promise." "I know," she said, tears tracking fast. "I know." "Pack a bag," I said. "Stay at Olivia's tonight. Her sister, the person who had warned her once, kindly, privately, to stop flirting with fire, will talk tomorrow." Will you at least hold me? She asked suddenly, like she was drowning, like maybe love could be a lifeline she'd cut and now wanted back. The part of me that loves to rescue leapt up like a trained dog. Another part, the one that remembers being 12 and watching my parents sign the papers that turned love into invoices, held the leash tight. No, I said, not tonight. After she left, the house sounded like a memory of itself. I scrubbed the sauce out of the carpet until my knuckles hurt. I showered and watched red water spin down the drain from my raw hands and thought, this is what it looks like when you try to clean what you can't. I lay in bed with the window open and the city humming and couldn't sleep. At 30,000 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table and wrote down everything I remembered of the last 3 months. The smells, the names, the little lies that weren't yet lies. I wasn't making a legal file, I was trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. In the morning, I called a therapist. A friend had sworn by and left a message that said, I need help not turning into someone I don't like. Then I called a lawyer, Elliot, who'd vetted the prenup for me. He answered on the second ring. Mason, he said, voice steady. What's happened? I think you know, I said, and told him. I expected him to push me straight toward enforcement. Instead, he asked questions about me that had nothing to do with court. Do you want to stay married? Do you want to punish her? Do you want a check or a boundary? He told me, you can separate the clause from vengeance, you can enforce it without hating her, or you can choose not to, and that's also a story you'll have to live with. I don't know what I want, I said, which was true, and also a stall. Then don't decide today, he said. Decide who you want to be first. Claire came over at noon. She had a duffel and the kind of face you get when you've cried, truly ugly tears, puffy eyes, red nose, a small tremor near her mouth like grief is a muscle that keeps firing. We sat across from each other. The plant she'd saved 3 times drooped dramatically because of course it did. I wrote to Julian, she said. I told him never to contact me again. I blocked him. I told my boss what happened. I'm not going to work with him anymore. You told your boss? I said, startled. I wanted to control the story, or at least the part I can control, she said, a humorless smile lifting the corner of her mouth. That's funny, isn't it? Me trying to control anything? Why now, I asked. Why him? She rubbed her forehead. I liked who I was when he looked at me. You and I, we're real. Real means bills and plans and toothbrushes in a glass and knowing the worst things about each other. He was shiny. He was the version of me I wanted to believe in. And I kept telling myself I could have the feeling without crossing the line, that I could be right up against it and still be good. I was wrong. I would have listened to you feeling small, I said. I would have done anything to make us bigger. I know, she said, and the way she said it, ragged, honest, split something in me. That's the part that makes me hate myself. You were available for the truth. I chose a lie anyway. We sat in the heavy kind of quiet where the only honest words are ones that break things. Finally, I said, I'm going to enforce the clause. She flinched, as if I'd thrown something. I hated that. I hated that I still wanted to absorb her flinch and make it mine. And I'm also going to try not to destroy you, I added. Not because you deserve gentleness right now, but because I do. She nodded, tears coming fresh. I'll pay it. I don't want this to be a war. Neither do I said. But I won't let you rewrite what happened into a misunderstanding we can hug away. I'm not asking you to, she said. I know exactly what I did. The next weeks were a study in contradictions. I moved through my life like an understudy who'd learned the lines but not the feeling. Work was a mercy tickets, deadlines, bugs that didn't care about heartbreak. My team didn't ask questions, they just put cold brew on my desk and gave me space to be competent. After work, I ran until my lungs burned, as if I could sweat the film off my skin. Nights were the hardest. Silence has a way of becoming loud when you're alone with it. Claire moved out temporarily to Olivia's. Her sister texted me once to say, I'm angry at her and I love her. Both things are true. I believe that. I believe 2 things could be true at once. That Claire was kind and she'd done something cruel. That I loved her and I needed to protect myself from her. That I wanted the clause to be a boundary. And I also wanted it to be an amulet that kept me from doubting my reality. We tried a therapist together twice. It's almost funny now, sitting on a gray couch, holding mugs of tea we didn't drink, telling a stranger about the most humiliating parts of ourselves. The therapist was gentle and precise. She asked Claire what the affair gave her besides adrenaline. Claire said, a mirror that only showed my favorite angles. She asked me what the prenup gave me besides control. I said, sane ground. She nodded like those were the correct wrong answers. We cried in the parking lot after the second session. Claire said, I don't know if I want you to forgive me or to never speak to me again so I don't have to see your face when you do. I said, I don't know if I want to forgive you or to hold on to my anger like a handrail. We both laughed, the wet kind you hear at funerals. Elliot filed a petition to enforce the clause. We didn't do theatrics. There was no surprise service at her office, no public unmasking. He emailed her attorney. They acknowledged receipt. We scheduled a hearing. People think court is drama. Mostly it's waiting in rooms that smell like plastic and old paper. The judge looked at the prenup the way you look at a blueprint. You check that lines meet where they're supposed to. She asked if it had been signed voluntarily with counsel. She asked if the clause was mutual. She asked if a breach had occurred. Claire's attorney said, we don't dispute it. The judge set terms and a timeline. That was that. It felt less like a sword coming down and more like a gavel tapping twice to confirm gravity. The money arrived 2 months later, not in cash or spectacle, but as a cashier's check delivered by a courier who looked bored. I held it longer than necessary, not because I needed to count zeros, but because I wanted to mark the moment when the story I told myself I was in finally changed genre. I deposited it and went home and made pasta with garlic and olive oil and ate it standing at the counter. It didn't taste like victory, it tasted like food. Claire texted, I sent it. I didn't reply, and that's a sentence I'm not proud of, but also not sorry for. Boundaries feel rude when you're used to being available. They're not. The cause didn't make me happy. It made me intact. There's a difference. I didn't buy anything big. I put most of it into investments and some into a scholarship fund. My father used to joke he'd start when life stopped charging interest. The irony would have pleased him. I booked a weekend in Marfa alone, not to find myself, but to sit in a different silence and see if it sounded better. It did. Claire and I met once more, in daylight, at a coffee shop where nobody knew us. She looked smaller and older at the same time, which is what grief does. I'm moving out, she said. I found a place near the lake. Tiny. It feels like a punishment, which weirdly makes me feel safe. You don't owe me updates, I said. I know, she said. This one is for me. She slid a letter across the table. I wrote this for you. You don't have to read it. It's just the truest thing I can make right now. I read it that night. 7 pages in her messy hand, childhood and the way her dad's disappearances taught her to love the attention of men who paid attention to her, the thrill of being chosen and the terror of being kept, the way our life, as secure as it was, made her feel like she was waiting to be graded. You never made me feel small, she wrote. I made me feel small next to your certainty. Julian felt like a shortcut to big. It is humiliating to write that. It is more humiliating to know I burned the house where I was safest because I wanted to stand in a spotlight that doesn't warm. She apologized without asking for anything back. She didn't absolve herself. She didn't ask me to. I cried, short, angry tears that felt like melting a metal I'd swallowed. The world did what it always does with other people's scandals. It chewed, swallowed, forgot. A few people at our firm knew. Whispers traveled. Julian transferred to a different city. Friends picked sides without telling us sometimes. I learned who could hold complexity and who needed villains to sleep at night. I won't pretend I healed in a straight line. Some nights I scrolled old photos and reread text and felt the urge to call her and ask for the story where we were still us. Some mornings I woke up and felt light, like my body had put down a weight while I was sleeping. Therapy helped more than I wanted to admit. My therapist had the annoying habit of asking, where do you feel that in your body? And then waiting while I described my chest like a weather report. Turns out, telling the truth out loud rewires you slowly, like sunlight growing something stubborn. Months later, in a grocery store aisle, I ran into Julian. It was the kind of mundane place where seeing the person who detonated your life feels like a cosmic joke. He looked like a man who'd been running late for too long, slack around the eyes, the charm turned down to a normal setting. He opened his mouth. No, I said, not cruel, just firm. We're not doing this. He nodded, and for the first time I saw the boy inside the man, ashamed, exhausted, smaller than he'd sold himself as. He put his basket down and walked away without buying anything. I stood there for a minute staring at a wall of cereal and felt nothing. Or not nothing, less. The part of me that had wanted an apology had finally understood that he didn't have one big enough to fill the space, and even if he did, I didn't want it. I dated in small, careful steps. I told the story in headlines, not chapters. My ex-fiancé cheated. We had a prenup. It was messy. I'm okay. Most people nodded like I told them about a surgery scar. Some were weird about the prenup, made faces like I'd confessed I kept receipts for hugs. One woman said, honestly, thank God. Men who have boundaries are hot. I liked her immediately for that sentence alone, even though we fizzled for other reasons. A year after the check, in a running group around Lady Bird Lake, I met Noelle. She ran like she was listening to a song nobody else could hear. We talked about boring things first, shoes, favorite stretches, the best tacos after a long run. She worked in city planning and cared about bus lanes with the ferocity of a revolutionary. When I told her the abbreviated version of my past, she said, I'm sorry you went through that, and then, I'm glad you didn't leave yourself. We took it slow, not as a strategy, but because neither of us had anything to prove. She didn't need me to perform steadiness, she had found her own. I didn't need her to reflect me, I had finally learned my shape. Claire and I bumped into each other twice in the next year. Once at a gallery opening, she was with a friend, hair shorter, laughter softer. She squeezed my arm in a hello that held no claim. Once in a parking lot, we both did the awkward wave and kept moving. The second time she stopped and said, I'm getting really good at being alone. I said, me too, and meant it as a compliment. People ask when they hear the story if the money made it better. No. Money doesn't touch the part of you that had to relearn the map of your own house, your own body, your own mornings. What it did was make me feel like the floor under me wasn't a favor. We wrote a rule together when we were kind. I enforced it when she wasn't. There is a clean dignity in that I will never regret. It didn't make me whole. It let me do the work of becoming whole without also bleeding out. Sometimes, late, when the city is a hush and the air feels thinner, I replay the last night we were us. Not the night of the discovery. The night before, when we ate tacos on the couch and argued about whether the top sheet is a scam. It is, and she put her bare feet under my thigh to warm them and we laughed at a stupid show. That night was real too, and pretending it wasn't is a kind of lie I refuse. Love was real. So was the betrayal. Both can be true. The story isn't clean, but it's mine. If you've never been where I stood, If the person you built your future with has never blown a hole in your present, you might think the moral is obvious: enforce the clause, get paid, move on. If you have been where I stood, you know the moral is stranger, love people, and when they show you they can't love you safely, love yourself enough to leave even when every cell wants to stay. Write rules when you're kind, keep them when you're hurt. Let the paper hold what your hands can't. Let your body teach you over and over that the ground is still there. What do you think? Was I right to enforce what we both signed, or should I have walked away without it? Tell me in the comments, and if stories like this keep you thinking long after they end, tap like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.